Hello artists, today we're going to be thinking about perspective again and thinking about being way down at the bottom of a bunch of trees and laying on the ground looking straight up, and how if we do that at the bottom of the tree it's going to look really big and it's going to get smaller, smaller, smaller toward the top. And we're going to use our beautiful warm autumn colors to show our fall leaves, and we're going to contrast that with cool color sky in the background. So follow along with me for all the steps. So to start with this picture, we are imagining that we're laying on the ground underneath these big tall trees, and we're thinking about perspective. And I know that if my hand is really close to the camera, it looks huge, and then the further away it goes, the smaller it looks. And it's the same thing with perspective of anything you're looking at. So if I'm pretending to be a little tiny worm on the ground, or I'm thinking of myself laying flat on the ground looking up at these huge trees, the part of the tree that is closest to me is going to be bigger, and as it goes up, 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 all these feet into the sky, it's going to get smaller, smaller, smaller. So to get started, I'm going to draw this tree going up, 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 up. Now, if I made it the same size all the way up, it looks like I'm looking at it straight on. But if I'm thinking about laying here on the ground, I know it's going to be a big, wide tree, and then it's going to get smaller, 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 all the way to the top where it basically disappears because it gets so tiny. And then we can put a couple little branches coming off of this tree, and again, they're going to be a little bit bigger, and then they're going to get smaller, 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 smaller. And then we can put a couple other little branches coming off a little bigger as it's there, and then when it goes up, it gets teeny tiny. All right, so there's my first tree. And then I might have another tree coming from here, and I'm going to do the same kind of thing. It's going to be big at the bottom, and it's going to get tiny up here at the top. So bigger, bigger, and then tiny, 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 disappeared into a little stick. And then we don't want to just have two trees in our forest. It looks cool to have some coming from the sides. So I'm going to have one little tree popping in from over here. It's going to be bigger at first, and then it's going to go up there and get tiny. So bigger, and then smaller, 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 smaller. And then we'll show some of those little branches coming off of the tree. Just a few, so it doesn't look like it doesn't have those branches. And I think I'm even going to have a little tree pop in from this edge too. So it's going to go like this, and then it's going to get tiny. So I've got it wide, and then smaller, 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 smaller. All right, so these trees are looking really big at the bottom and really tiny at the top. And that is perfect. That's exactly what we were wanting to do. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some color. We're imagining that these are birch or aspen trees, and they have a really unique look. They almost have white bark, and then they have like little areas of black and brown across them. So to do that, we're going to be making curved lines. That also helps make the tree look a little more 3D. So instead of drawing straight across, we're going to be doing little curves like this. And as you see that comes up, already these curves, when we're curving it, it makes it look more round as it goes up, up, up. So curved lines going in, curving along the tree, making it look more round. Something else these trees have are like these little spots, these little knots. And so we'll put some of those on your tree just to make it look like those cool birch trees. We're adding those little curved lines as they go through. You can use your brown crayon. You can also layer some black because it kind of has both of those colors on them. Just make sure that you're not using straight lines, you're doing a curved line. And then you can put some of the little knots on the tree. And we're just going to keep bringing those curves all the way around, all the way to the top. And you'll see all of a sudden you're like, wow, it's starting to look rounded instead of just like a flat stick. So we're going to do that all the way to the top. And you're going to do that to all 4 of your trees, or however many trees you decided to do. So again, on this tree over here, I'm going to be curving those lines. Curve, curve, curve. And that way it's getting that rounded look. And then I want to add some of those little spots to show like the little area on the bark where there's these little spots. Probably going to grab my black and do the same thing. It's kind of like little ovals, and sometimes there's like a little line in there. And you're just going to do this to every tree you have to give it that 3D look. So I added some of those brown and black curved lines. I didn't cover the whole tree, and I left a lot of white space, and then just kind of have them sporadically spread out with some little spots to make it look like those birch trees. The next thing we're going to do is get out our markers, and we're looking at those warm colors, those autumn colors that we can use, and we're going to start just adding some little texture on the outside of where these leaves would be. So they're going to go right off the page. And I'm going to use some crayons to color them in. I also have my warm color crayons. But to get started, I want to make some texture with some squiggly wiggly lines. So I'm just going to take some squiggly wiggly. See, I'm just doing kind of like a little squiggle, almost like a dotted line. And that's going to add some cool texture to where those leaves are going to be. And I know that we're going to be using all the warm colors to make our picture really cool. So I'm just adding some little wiggly squigglies of where these leaves will be. And I know they'll definitely be around my little branch here. So I'm just adding some of that texture. Little wiggly squiggly lines. And I'm going to do that kind of all over where the trees are to show how these leaves are just everywhere. These beautiful fall leaves are just all over these trees. So I'm just adding some of those textures, definitely around the branches. And I want to add some other colors too. So I'm going to put some red everywhere, and then I'm going to use the orange too. But you can see it looks like we're looking right up at these trees, and then all of these beautiful leaves are smushed together as the tops of the trees are touching. And so it goes right off the page. Just little wiggly squiggly dotted lines. All right. Have some coming down here too, right behind these trees. And I'll do some with my orange. Just some little squiggles of where these colors are coming through. These beautiful leaves on top of these huge trees. And I'm so tiny laying down here looking up at these trees. And that perspective is why they look so much bigger on the bottom and so much smaller when they're far, far away up in the sky. Just adding more of these squiggly lines. Squiggle away. And I'll throw a little yellow marker in there too. And you can see it's starting to take shape, but it's really going to look amazing when we add that crayon and we start coloring in the different areas of our tree. All right, almost done with these squiggles here. There's some branches coming down with some leaves down here. All right, and now I get to the fun part of really adding all this color in for our trees. So I like to just kind of do different sections differently. So I might do like on this side, it'll be more of those yellow branches. So here's some yellow on this tree. So I'm just kind of coloring in. And maybe then it fades into more of this tree being more of the orange. So I'm just gently coloring. And so as you color in, you don't want it to look like just one big blob. So then you start using like harder pressure to make sure that it looks like leaves with those wiggly squigglies. And so we're just adding that around, adding some of this orange wiggly squigglies. And I want to outline it so it doesn't look like it's just plain. I want to make sure it looks like little leaf shapes. And then maybe I'll have a little of this red orange up here. So again, I'm adding with my crayon. And then I'm adding that wiggly texture so it doesn't just look like I'm coloring it in solid. I want it to look like the outside shape of leaves. And you can have a couple stray leaves down here, like maybe down here these leaves started to turn orange, so we add a little bit of that. Just make sure you have your little leaf texture. Even some stray leaves coming down there. Some little stray leaves. All right, this is starting to look really cool. Then you can fade it into your red. I can have this part of the tree be beautiful red leaves. And then I'm going to use some little half circles to look like the leaf shape. And I can have a couple leaves that are hanging down or falling down. And I really think it's starting to come together and look awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and keep adding these different warm colors. I could add a little bit of pink if I want. I could add some of this reddish pink. I've seen those like purplish leaves and they look really cool. And you're just going to continue coloring in a section. And then instead of just making it look solid, you're going to add that texture by kind of wiggling your crayon around and making some little half circles. And right there, it still looks pretty flat to me, so I'm going to get a darker color on top and add that texture so it looks more like leaves and not just like I colored it in plain. Get my yellow back over here, put some more of those beautiful yellow leaves. And I can add some more texture. Just making sure it looks like little leaf chunks on my tree. And we're going to go ahead and finish coloring all of those leaves in. Now that you've got these awesome different colored warm leaves with wiggly squiggly lines and texture, one thing that I think looks cool is to just show some little dots down here to show some of the leaves that are just kind of loose hanging at the bottom of the branches. So I just add some of those little dots in and I think it gives it a cool texture. I'll do some with the yellow too. And then we are ready to color this sky, because if I'm laying on the ground and I'm looking up at these beautiful fall leaves, the sky is not going to be white. The sky is going to be a very light blue. I have this blue-green in my crayon box that I'm going to use. If you have like a sky blue, that could work really well. Or even if you only have the regular blue, just don't push too hard. Push lightly to give it that pale sky color. And then we're going to go ahead and color in our sky. Gently making sure that I don't accidentally get blue on my tree. And I'm just going to color in the sky, this really beautiful light blue. And I'm going to sneak up around the edges of my leaves Make sure I don't leave any white space, and I am pushing so lightly just to give it a really light blue. And I'm trying not to leave a bunch of white spaces, so I'm going back over it to make a nice solid blue color. And I think that is looking so cool. So I'm going to do that in every section, and even up here where I have a little bit of the blue sky showing, I'm going to want to pop in there and add that blue sky showing through so it doesn't look like the sky isn't up here behind these beautiful fall leaves. So I'm just adding a little bit of that sky in, just in a few different little sections here to make sure that we can see the blue sky behind our trees. Up here too, I see a little blank space. I'm going to fill that in, showing our blue sky. And then I just need to fill in these other sections with my blue sky. And now I've got my whole sky filled in. I have my trees going up into the sky, getting smaller from this perspective on the ground, and all of these fall leaves. So we are totally done with this project. I am really satisfied with this picture. I think it's so cool. I can't wait to see what you create.